Hi and welcome to this cPanel course. I'm going to go step by step showing you how you can install cPanel, set it up, secure it, and host your website. So by the end of this tutorial, you can be sure that you're going to be comfortable enough to work with cPanel. The most important parts will be covered, and that is how to install and access cPanel and WHM. Other parts you may have to go and find on the documentation, but the most important parts I'm going to show you. That is starting all the way from a blank server, setting up the server, installing cPanel, securing cPanel, and setting up DNS and everything you need to run your website. And of course, I'm going to show you how you can install WordPress on cPanel, but that is just an example. You can install whatever you want to install on cPanel, whatever you want to run on cPanel. So by the end of the tutorial, you can be sure that you're going to be comfortable enough to work with cPanel. If you don't have any cPanel skills, you've never used it before, you're going to see, you've never used it as a system admin before, you're going to get the skills that you need to work with WHM and cPanel. If you have anything else that you want to learn beyond this, you can always go to the documentation, and by the end of the tutorial, you're going to see that it's really not that difficult to get things working on cPanel because you will have the documentation and the forum to assist you. So let's get started. So let's get started right away, and you should follow all the steps. I've created this for you so that you can follow along easily. And if you get stuck at any point, even in future, you can just contact me and I will be able to assist you. So what I have here are the steps for what we're going to do. We're going to generate an SSH key and all these other steps, change server hostname, and then after doing all this, we're going to finally install cPanel. So first things first, we need to generate an SSH key. Since you're on Windows, you're going to need Git Bash to follow along with me. And I'm going to show you how to install that in a moment. Even if you're not on Windows, you can follow along with terminal. So first, let's go and install Git Bash. And to install Git Bash, we need to install Git. Git will come with all the components like Git Bash, Git GUI, and so on. So let's just search for Git. And you need to download it from Git SCM. I'm just going to click there on Windows, and it will take me to the download page for Windows. I'll download the standalone installer for 64-bit system. And I want to install it. I don't want to use the portable one. I'll just install it. And then I will open it to install it. Next, I'll just install it with the default settings. Already exists. Would you like to install anyway? Yes. If you need to add anything to your installation, you can do so. So the only thing I will select here is I will add the Git Bash profile to Windows terminal. You can also enable checking for updates, but I'm going to leave that out. Then I'm going to click next, and then select an editor. Here, since I have Visual Studio Code installed, I'm just going to choose that from my list here. And I will select Visual Studio Code. And then next, I will let Git decide next. I will leave it at the default. Leave the default option. Leave the default options for everything else that follows. Install. There we go. The installation is complete. I can launch Git Bash. Let me just select launch Git Bash. I don't want to view the release notes, so I'm just going to click on finish. And now the next step, we're going to see how you can deploy your Hetzner server. But before that, we'll need to generate an SSH key. So we're going to generate an SSH key and then add that to Valtra, and that's what we're going to use to log into our server. We don't want to use the password. Since you will be installing cPanel later, of course, you need to have a root user password, and you're going to see how you can change your root user password. So I'll open Git Bash here. Let's generate our SSH key. So I'll come in here, and as I've said, the commands are here. So the first thing, we're going to make a directory where we can store our SSH keys. So it will be stored in my home directory. in this folder called .ssh, and then inside of .ssh, I want to create my own folder, and that folder is where my keys are going to be located. So first, let me create these directories. So I'm just going to paste the command there. This has been created. I'm going to come back, and now I need to generate my SSH key. In case you want to change the name of your folder, you can change the name there. Just copy this command in a text editor and edit it based on your preference. So here, I'm just going to copy this. I will paste. So let me paste it here and explain it here. So SSH keygen, this is a command that is used to generate SSH keys on Linux-based, Unix-based systems. Since you're using Git Bash, you can use it without any problems. So -t is going to tell the system which type of key to generate, and it's going to generate this type of key, which is a modern key, and it's a shorter key. And nowadays, if you're generating an SSH key, just go with that. -f signifies the file name. So with -f, it means that we can create our SSH keys and give them a name. So for example, we did create this directory, and inside of that directory, we want to store SSH keys called this. So you can give it any name that you prefer. And then something else that is not here, but I can add is -c. Now -c is just a command that is added to the key, and it can let you know which key this server belongs to. So for example, if I was to add something here like Ricky's server key, this will let me know that this is for my Ricky server. Rocky, I mean. So if I was to copy this, I can generate my SSH key, and I can just do Control U. Yeah, Control U will delete the entire line. So I'm going to paste again, and in Git Bash, you can do Shift Insert to paste. And the first thing you can see, it's asking me for a passphrase. Now, a passphrase is important because when somebody gets your key, and it is possible for someone to get your key, if they do get it, they won't be able to use it if they don't know your passphrase. In this case, I'm just going to create a passphrase, and you should do the same as well. Enter, confirm the passphrase. So my key has been generated, and the location for my key is there. So you can see the key has -c/that, but when I was generating the key, I just used that. So that is the same thing. This simply signifies my home directory, and my home directory on this Windows computer is that. So that is what has been replaced by that. If you use this on Linux, it simply means your home directory. So now that we have our keys ready, the next thing we need to do is we need to take our public key, take the public key and add it to Hetzner. Before we get there, we're going to start by deploying a server. So on Hetzner, you need to add a project where you're going to put everything for that server. So if you want to deploy a server, you need to create a project. So you can add a new project. If you don't have a project, it's very easy to add. Just click Add Project, give it a name, and save. So here I'm going to use the test project, and I'm going to create server. Click on Create Server to create a new server. I can choose the location for my server. So we are coming back to that issue of adding our SSH key, and it's something you can do here as well. Choose the location where you want your server. Always choose a location that is closest to your users. In this case, I'm just going to go with this location in Germany. And then the image, since I'm going to install cPanel, cPanel can be installed on Ubuntu, Rocky Linux, Alma Linux, and CentOS. So I'm going to go with Rocky Linux for this, and I'm going to stick with Rocky version 9. Next, I'm going to need to choose a server type, and you can go with dedicated virtual servers, or you can go with the shared VPS servers, and I'm going to stick with the shared options. And cPanel only supports AMD Intel servers, so go with those. And for this, cPanel requires at least 1 GB or 4 GB of RAM. So I'm going to select this Intel plan. I'm going to select that. And then as for networking, I'll just leave public IPv4 support and public IPv6 support. And then here under SSH, we need to add our SSH key. the one that we've just generated. And we can do that by coming here and click on add SSH, and we need to paste our public key inside here. So our public key, we can find it easily by coming back here, and there is our public key. So I will copy that, and I need to open the key to look at the content of that key. So I will do Control L to clear the screen, and then I will paste in that location, and I need to open it. I want to open it with Visual Studio Code. So I'm just going to do code and then enter. You can add a comment, you can add your email, and so on. So I'm just going to copy the entire content of that public key, copy, and I will come back to Hetzner and I will add the details for that key. And it has just given it the name. It's picked out the name from the comment that I added. I'm just going to leave the name as that, but you can change the name if you need to. And you can also set it as the default key. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to click on add SSH key. I will unselect all the other keys and just use this key for my server. And then volumes, if you need to add volumes, you can add this later on. Even now, if you need to add extra volume, maybe you want to use it for backup, you can create a volume. But this is something that you can add later on if you don't need it now. So firewall as well, you can add firewall rules on the Hetzner cloud. And it's not really that difficult. You just add in the ports that you want to allow. And then backups, you can enable backups, which is a good thing. And backups are 20% of the server price. So if you enable backups, your monthly billing is going to go up with 20%. So of course, it's a good thing to enable. Make sure you enable that. You never know when you're going to need the backup. And then placement groups, you don't need that. You're going to leave that out. Labels, we don't need that as well. In this setup, we're going to leave that out. And then cloud config, I don't have any cloud init commands that I need to run in this server now. So I'm just going to leave it out. And then as for the name, I will use a fully qualified domain name, and hopefully Hetzner is going to add this as a host name on our server, because at some point we are also going to need to change the server host name. I will use this domain, and if you come down here, there's something we need. If you come down here, there's some things we'll need to do. We need to change the server host name, and I also need to add the server host name. I will also need to add that to Cloudflare. When we get there, we're going to talk about that. But for now, let's see what you can use as the server host name. So I can use server1.that as my host name. And I'm just going to copy this and add it here. Hopefully, it's going to add this as a host name for my server. Even if it doesn't, we're going to still need to change it. If everything is as it should be, let's just confirm everything here. We have Rocky Linux. We have that. We've set up an SSH key. So I'm just going to create and buy now. So once we get our primary IP and the server is ready, we are going to log in via SSH using the SSH key that we created. While the server is deploying, we need to add some DNS records, and I'm going to use Cloudflare for that. I do have a video for Cloudflare, and I've linked to it there. And I've linked the video here. This is a domain on Cloudflare. I'm just going to click there on DNS, and I need to add the IP address. So I will copy, come back to Cloudflare. So I will leave the other record as there, but I need to add a record for my host name. So I'm just going to click there on add record, and our host name is server1.mydomain. So to add the host name for that, I'm going to add an A record, and I will just call it server1. And I will paste in the IP address there. Since it's a record, I'm just going to save. There we go. Okay, so the server seems to be ready. If you click on it, you can see the details about your Hostname server. We have deployed our server. Let's see how we can log into this server. Let's get the IP. I'll just click on it to paste my IP. Our user by default is root. So let's go back to Git Bash. Control L to clear the screen. To log into your server, you're just going to do SSH. The user is root. At the IP, shift insert to paste your IP. And then -I for the identity of the private key. And the private key, if I scroll all the way up here, the private key is that. So make sure you save this key paths once you generate your key. So I'm just going to select it and paste and enter. So it's asking us to accept the key fingerprint. So this, I will just type yes. You have to type yes and then enter. And since we added a passphrase for our SSH keys while we are generating them, then we're going to need to add that passphrase here. So make sure it's something that you remember. There we go. I'm now logged into my server. And if I was to do host name ctl, this will show us the details for our server, and we can see our static host is correctly added because when we were generating the server, that's what we added as the name of our server. So you can see the importance of that. We can see we are running Rocky Linux 9, and this is a Hostname server. So what I'm going to do here next is just to update the server, and since I'm root, I can just do dnf update. This command is here. In fact, the command is here. Once you log in, it's here. After we generated the key, we used it. Now we used it to log in there. And then update -y. And then we're also going to need to install all these other things. Of course, if you're following along, just come here and copy this, paste it, and you won't have to type anything. I'm being asked to confirm, and the reason for that is because I did not add -y in my command, and that is already there. So you won't need that confirmation yourself. I can confirm, and you have to type Y. So you can see this is a small y, and this is a capital Y. This means that if you press enter without entering yes or no, the default is no, and it will not install or update what you need updated. So you have to explicitly type yes, and then enter. So it's going to download and do all the updates, but let me just come back here. I will need to install some of this. So this curl is what cPanel uses to download the script. And then cPanel is written in Perl, so it definitely will need Perl to run. And wget is just an alternative to curl for downloading items. And then vim, this is probably already installed. And this is the editor I will be using. On the terminal, just using vi will give me vim. And then screen, this is used when, in case your session closes and you're locked out of your server, if you log back in, you can just do screen and you'll get back what you were doing previously. So that's the benefit of this, and that's why I want to install it. And we're going to see where we use this when we get to installing cPanel. I'm just going to copy this part. This is just used to join two Linux commands. So once this runs, that will run next. That is what this is doing here. So let me come back to Git Bash. Let's wait for the updates to complete, and then we're going to install these applications. There we go. The update is complete. So I'm just going to do Control L to clear the screen, and I will paste in the commands for installing those applications. So I'm just going to do Shift Insert to paste in Git Bash and then enter. So let's see. Package curl is already installed. Wget is already installed. No much argument for screen. It turns out on Rocky Linux it was removed, but in Rocky Linux 8 and below it is available. So what I'll need to do is I'll need to install the Apple package, and that's going to come with screen. you can screen is not available in the default DNF package repository. So I'm just going to Control L to clear the screen, and I will install DNF install apo release. I'm going to add this here so that it doesn't confuse you. When you look at this, you're going to see that I've added the solution there. Paste. So I'm going to do DNF install apo release. And I always forget to add the Y in advance. I can do Control C to abort the operation, and then I'm going to just add the -y here. So when you're installing anything on Linux, just add the -y in advance. All right, so that's installed. The next thing, let's install that screen. DNF-y install screen. And now you can see that it is installed. So I'm going to add that here so that you're not lost when you get there. When you are following along, you won't be lost. In the first part, we've deployed our server with an SSH key that we generated. We've logged into our server. We've updated the server and installed the necessary packages. In the next part, you're going to see how you can change the server hostname in case it's different and add the hostname to Cloudflare. We've already done that. You've seen me add the hostname to Cloudflare. And the reason I'm doing this is because that's what I'll use to log into my cPanel. I will not use my IP. I will use the hostname to log into my cPanel. The next part, you're going to see how we can create that. We're going to disable SELinux. We're going to finally install cPanel. That's the next part. I'm going to add various affiliate links for various VPS providers that you can use if you need to get a cloud server. You can use these cloud providers using my link to support my endeavors. I will greatly appreciate it. Thanks in advance for your support. Let's continue. Let's just talk about changing your server hostname. If you need to change the hostname for your server, this is how you can do it. If you did everything I did and you followed along with Hetzner and you added your server name as the host name, then it was automatically added to Hetzner, and you saw that in the last part. Paste this here, and let's say you want to change your host name. Let me paste it after this. I should also get my IP address. Copy the IP. We'll put that there. So the hostname control, this will enable you to set a host name. So put the host name that you want there. For example, if you want to change your server to this host name, you can do so. Just copy and replace there, and then run this on your server. Once you're logged into your server, run that. Now the next part is one part that almost everybody usually forgets, but you need to add the host name in the etc hosts file. So you can do this manually, and let me just show you how you can do it manually instead of using this. If I copy this, so we're going to open it with Vim, and we need to add the host name. So to add the host name, we're going to add the IP address of our server. Control V. Here we'll need to add the host name for your server. Control V. And we also need to add the alias for the server. Now the alias, this is the alias where we're logged into our server. It tells you which server you're logged into. That is the alias. We need to add this inside of this file. You can also do so with this. So if you just copy this, it's going to add it at the end of this file. It's going to add your server host details at the end of the etc hosts file. And you can do that if you just copy that and replace with that, paste. It's going to add it at the end of this file, but you can also do it manually. If you just copy this and you come back to your server, shift insert will open the etc hosts file, and you can see we don't have any detail about our IP. That's why I'm adding it in the hosts file. So I'm going to copy this. If I just scroll down, if I do shift insert in Vim, just press escape and then shift ZZ that's going to save this file. So escape, Shift ZZ is going to save it. If you want to go out without saving, you can do Shift ZQ, or you can use the common ones, :WQ. All right, so that's assuming that you need to change your host name and then add the hostname DNS. We've already done that. I don't know that it has already propagated. Let me check. Control Shift P to open incognito. You can see web server is down. This is good. Cloudflare has propagated our DNS. So if we install it, we will be able to log in using our server host name. You saw how I did that in the last part. And if you need more, you can always watch the video there. And then create a swap file. The next step, let's create our swap file. The rule for creating swap files that cPanel recommends is if your server is 2 GB and below, you create a swap file that is twice the value of your RAM. If your RAM is 4 GB and above, create a swap file that is the same value as your RAM. So I'm just going to create a swap file of 4 GB, and the swap file will be called that. So if I come back to here and I do free-h, enter, you'll see we don't have a swap created. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to Shift Insert to paste. The swap file has now been created. If I do free-h again, we're going to see that now we have a swap file of 4 GB. And then the next step, we need to disable SELinux. To disable SELinux, we need to edit this SELinux configuration file, and we need to change the SELinux value to disabled. So let me copy that. I'm just going to Control L to clear the screen. Shift Insert to paste. So if you scroll down, you're going to see SELinux permissive. This means that it allows certain things. So we need to change that to disabled. So I don't want to type. I'm just going to copy disabled from there. On Vim, if you want to edit something, and I want to go to the end of this line, I'm just going to do Shift A to go to the end of the line in insert mode. Insert mode allows you to write or type inside of Vim. If you don't do that, you won't be able to type anything. So do Shift Insert, Shift A to go to the end of the line, or you can do I to go into insert mode. Shift Insert, and then Shift Insert will paste disabled in there, and then I will escape and I will do Shift ZZ to save that file. And once you do that, you're going to need to reboot the server. Reboot, since I'm logged in as root, I can do reboot, enter. So we can look for the command. Let's just see if the server is already up. It's up. Control L to clear the screen. Okay, so the next thing we need to disable the firewall before we can install cPanel. So I'm just going to copy these rules as they are, copy these commands as they are, and before I do this, let's just confirm that our server does not allow password authentication. etc or vi etc sshd config. So we're going to do permit, enter, and permit root login, prohibit password. That is good. That's good. That's what I wanted. I don't want password authentication allowed, because if I turn off my server and someone is busy trying to get into my server, they might be able to do it. So make sure you enable prohibit password. And in the last part, I showed you how to deploy your server with SSH key. So that is one of the benefits of that. The next thing I want to search, let's just see if anyone else is allowed to log in with password authentication. So we'll search again for password O and then enter. Password authentication, yes. Is there another one? Next, I'm just pressing N on my keyboard to see if there are any occurrences of that password authentication that I've just searched for. So press N again, and password authentication is allowed on my server. I can see it is allowed because this is commented out. If it is commented out, it means that the default value is being used, and the default value is allow password authentication. So for now, I'm just going to disable this password authentication, and I'll just press I so that I can edit something in Vim. So I will delete the hash sign to uncomment this, and then I will go to the end and I will enter no, and I will delete the yes, press escape, and I told you to save, just do Shift ZZ. And after I do that, I need to restart SSH, but even before I do that, there's something else I want to confirm. SSH config D, there's this directory where you can put your SSH configurations, and usually some cloud providers will put their SSH configurations here, and this will override the configurations that you have in your main SSH configuration file. So let's just confirm if that's the case here, and I can see there is that situation here going on. The situation that allows for these files to override your SSH authentication, to override your SSH config file. I want to see the content of these two files. I'm just going to do cat sshd / and then 50. I want to see the contents of this file. So cat 50, and I'll just press tab, automatically complete the name of that file. Cut that file, and you can see password authentication. No, okay, so the password authentication thing that I've changed in the SSHD configuration. So the password authentication that I've just changed in this configuration file was already changed here. So this means that this is going to take precedence regardless of what I put there. This is going to take precedence over this. This will override any value that I put there. Okay, let's see what else we have inside of this 50 Red Hat conf. So I'm just going to select it and paste. And I want to copy everything from here. Shift insert to paste, enter. And this one has different rules. For the one for Red Hat, this one has different rules. syslog facility, challenge response. I'm just going to leave them, but at least I know that password authentication is now not allowed. Password authentication is not allowed. The root user is allowed to log in, but they can only log in with prohibit password. That is what that means. They can't log in with the password, only the SSH key. All right, so that means even if I disable my firewall, I will not be susceptible to brute force attacks, successful brute force attacks. So I'm just going to do Shift insert, and I will enter failed to stop firewall D, service not loaded, service does not exist. So you can see here firewall D is not installed, but later on we're going to see how to install it. Status firewall D service not found. Okay, so it is not installed. That means we can go ahead with cPanel installation, and then once we've installed it, we can install Firewall D. So finally, the last step is to install cPanel, and then we're going to log in just as a teaser to see that our cPanel is ready and we can start setting it up. So I'm going to copy this command. The cPanel documentation is there for you. You can always find what you're looking for in the documentation or in the forums. So I'm going to copy this, and you can just Google cPanel installation, and it will lead you to a link where you'll have the cPanel official documentation with this link. So let me come here, and I'm just going to do Ctrl L to clear the screen, then Shift insert. So screen is going to allow me to go into screen mode. In case I lose connection to my server, the screen command is going to allow me to go back after logging into my server and pick up where I left. So I'm going to press enter to continue with the installation. Okay, so I need to type this screen, enter, and I will copy this. Copy. Let the cPanel installation continue, and then once it's done, we're going to log in. So something I've seen here, I need to run the screen command on its own. I cannot run it together with this. So I'm going to edit that, and I also need to edit something else up here. There's also something else that I needed to edit up there. I'm going to edit that as well. So for now, let's just wait for the cPanel installation to continue, and then once it's done, we'll see how we can log into our server. There we go. cPanel installation has completed. Now the next step is just to confirm that everything went well. If you want to log into WHM, WHM is the overall manager for cPanel, where you can do all the server related stuff. cPanel is usually for your users if they want to add websites and so on. So here we need to log in. I already have my server host name, and this is the one I'm going to use to log in because I already added the DNS records for this on Cloudflare. And before you install cPanel, make sure you do that. So I'm going to put that there, and I need to add the port for logging into WHM is 2087. And I'm just going to copy this, paste and go. There you go. You can log into WHM as well. If I was to paste this and change this to 3, we should be able to log into cPanel as well. All right, so you've seen how to install it all the way up to this point. So I need to install Firewall. So I'll go there. This will install Firewall, and this will enable it and start it. So I'm just going to copy the entire thing. Control L to clear the screen. Let's just go back to find the status of Firewall. Okay, Firewall is now running. Control C, Control L. So let's list any services that are allowed on Firewall. So I'm going to copy that from there. So these are the only things that are currently allowed on Firewall. If I want to see the ports that are allowed, so these are the services that are allowed, but which ports are allowed? If you scroll down, you're going to see this command that I've added for you here, sudo firewall cmd list ports. Enter. There are no ports allowed in Firewall. In the Firewall now, let's see if we go to WHM, if it's going to even log in. Okay, so you can see that's because I've enabled Firewall. So after installing like that, let's go ahead and configure the firewall rules for cPanel. So I'm just going to copy, and I'm going to paste that command there. Press enter. So you can see when we run list all for Firewall, it's going to add cPanel. But now let's see if we go to cPanel WHM, you can see now that one is running. Let's look at cPanel as well. If we reload it, it's also running. Before we even log in, let's just see if we refresh, if we reboot the server, if the rules are going to persist if we reboot the server. I'm going to do reboot. After restarting the server, if I refresh, cPanel is working, and this side as well, it's working. Now the next thing is, of course, to log into our server. And up to this point, I don't know my root password. I did log in using SSH key on my server. Let's see how we can generate the password for our server, or we can change it, not generate, but change the password. So let's just come here. I'm going to come up with a password here, and I can use it as my root password. Right. So after coming up with this long string of password. This is what I'm going to use as my root password. So I'm going to copy, and I will come back to my server. I'll do Control L to clear the screen, and then I will do pass wd root. This is used to change the password. Pass wd root, and it's asking for the new password. So since I'm on Git Bash, I'm just going to do Shift Insert to paste, enter, Shift Insert again to paste, enter, and the password has now been changed. So let's try to log in with that password on WHM. So if I do root, enter the password, right. So the first thing, you need to accept the terms and conditions, end user agreement. You need to accept that, and it's telling me the browser does not support the embedded document, but I think the issue is I am using IDM. Does it do anything? Okay, so if I click on it, it does disable it. So let me refresh the page. Scroll for more. You can accept the end user. And if you just scroll down here, and if you just come down here, so you can scroll on this side, put your cursor there, scroll, and then accept the end user agreement, and then continue. Get started with the free cPanel trial. So of course, if you already have a license, you can use it. But if you don't, you can use the free trial. So in this case, I'm just going to log into my cPanel store. All right, so once I'm logged in, verify email address to activate the free trial. I'll just look at my email to get the verification code. There we go. I will copy, verify, and this should generate a key for my server. So I'm going to click on server setup, email address optional, but you can put your email address here. In case of any errors, you will be notified via email. And then name servers, since I'm using Cloudflare, most of the times Cloudflare usually just uses the same name servers for the domains that you add on the same account. So what I can do is I can come in here, and under DNS, let me find the name servers that Cloudflare usually uses. I'm going to copy that as my first DNS name server record. The most important thing to get your website working, and you're going to see how to do that when we get there, is to make sure that your domain has been added here. The most important thing is to make sure, if you're going to use Cloudflare, your domain is added here, and your DNS records and your name server records are also changed on your domain provider. So whether that's Namecheap, GoDaddy, whichever provider you're using, just go there and change the name servers. And as I said, there's a tutorial here, a video that shows you how to set up Cloudflare DNS. For this, I'm just going to click Save Settings. Any recommendations that cPanel makes for you, just save them. So at some point, of course, I will show you how to activate a real license. Once I purchase one, I'll make sure I purchase one and show you how you can add one to your WHM. So with the trial license, it is limited to 30 user accounts. If I need to purchase the license, I can just click there and it will take me to the store, to the cPanel store. All right, so this is WHM. This is where you will manage your server. Everything you need to do on your server is here. If you look here, you can see we are running cPanel version 120, and the OS is Linux 9.4, Rocky Linux 9.4. All right, so you're wondering, can I log into cPanel with my root account? No, you'll need to create an account on WHM to log into cPanel. Let's just do it as an example. Root, and this is a password for the WHM that we set up. So I'm going to log in and you'll see the login is invalid. If you want to log into cPanel, you'll need to come into account functions. You'll need to come into account functions and create a new account. Once you create an account, you'll be able to log into cPanel. For now, I can wrap up this part by saying that in this part, you have seen how to install cPanel. You have logged into WHM and you haven't logged into cPanel. cPanel is where you manage your websites. If you want to add email, websites, and so on, that's where you're going to do that. And that's why you're not able to log in there, because you still don't have a user for your cPanel. To add a user, you've seen you can add that by going to account management. You can come here to account functions and you can create a new account for your cPanel. Just to end, you have seen how you can enable the firewall back and install cPanel, login. You've seen all this. You've also seen how you can log into the cPanel and activate a trial license. So that's it for this part. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. All right, that's it for this. See you in the next part. In this part, let us see how we can improve WHM cPanel security before we see how we can host a WordPress website. So when it comes to security, the one place that will give you most of the recommendations that you need to do on your panel is the documentation. So you can get to the documentation. If you come all the way down here, you can click here, and this is going to take you to WHM documentation. So when you're here, you can search for security related things or anything that you need to do. You can always search on the documentation. So for example, let's say I'm looking for best security practices. So I'm looking for security best practices. So I will search and see some of the recommendations that I will get from cPanel. So here under security best practices, I can click on that. Here are other pages with recommendations. So you can click there and see the different options that they provide and how you can achieve them directly on the WHM dashboard. So in this part, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to install CSF Firewall, which is the config server, security, and firewall. This is the one that is mostly used in cPanel servers. I'm just going to log in to my server, enter the passphrase, and there we go. I'm logged in. First things first, I'm going to disable Firewall D. I had enabled it earlier in a previous video. First thing, I have to disable it. All right, so we've disabled Firewall D. Let's go ahead and install CSF. So I can just copy the entire command from there. And before I even paste it, let's just explain it. So this is directly from the cPanel documentation. And the first step here is we are going to go into this directory. And then once we're inside of that directory, we're going to download CSF. It's a small file, less than 2 MB. And then we're going to extract it. And after extracting it, we're going to go into the extracted folder, which is CSF. And then we're going to install CSF using the install script that is there. Copy that, paste, enter. There we go. Installation for CSF is complete. So if we come back to WHM, let me collapse everything here. Down here we have plugins, and you can see right now we don't have the CSF plugin, but if I refresh the page, we should see under plugins, config server is now here. This CSF firewall is now here. So I'm going to click on that, and it's going to help us to improve security for our server. CSF is not enabled by default. Right now it is in test mode. So to enable it, you'll just scroll down until you see firewall configuration. Click on that. If you scroll down, you can see here we have testing is on. So you need to make testing off. And that way, it's going to start protecting our server actively. Once you do that, just scroll all the way down and click on change. And now you'll need to restart CSF firewall. if I was to go back to the homepage for CSF, you'll see that firewall starters enabled and running. Let's see which other recommendations we can get from CSF to improve our security. To check the recommendations from CSF that will help us improve security, I'm just going to click here on Check Server Security. Here you'll see there are lots of recommendations. All this can be done, and we're going to do most of them, almost all of them. And down here you can see our server score is 80 out of a possible 103. So let's see how we can improve our server security. All right, so since we are already logged into our server, let's see how we can implement some of this. So we are going to start with the ones that have a link that we can easily get to do via WHM. So the first one that we can do is check shell limits. So this is something we can just enable from here. So I will open this in a new tab. So we'll enable protection, and enabling this is going to protect your SSH resources. If other users are given SSH access, this is going to limit their SSH resource usage. So enable protection. All right, so you can see enabled. Let's go back here and let's see what else we can do. Check background process killer. You should enable each item in WHM. I'm going to click on that, open in a new tab. So the recommendation is that we select all these items. So I'm just going to select all the checkboxes and then save. Let's see if there's anything we can do immediately. Something in WHM settings. So let's start here with the WHM settings, and the tweak settings that is in server configurations. Let's disable bootstrapper. So these are WHM settings. Let's just go ahead and disable them one at a time. So the first one here is here under tweak settings, and that is under server configuration. We need to disable. So instead of going through the list, I'm just going to select that, copy, come back, Control F to find it, and enable bootstrapper spam trap off. That is a recommendation. And then scroll all the way down and save. But there are other things we're going to do here still. So let's see what else is there. Under tweak settings, check max emails per hour. Copy that, come back, Control F, Control V. So let me click on tweak settings to go back to the settings, and we want to look for max emails per hour. There we go. Here under mail, max hourly emails per domain. You can set a value. So select there and set a value. You can make it 99. So this is a number of emails that can be sent out per hour. You can reduce it or increase it depending on your expectations. And then the next thing before I save, let's see if there's anything on tweak settings that I'm going to change as well that I'll need to change. Check reset password for cPanel accounts. So I will copy this, and let's come back here and search for that as well. So I'll just do Control F to search for it. Reset password for cPanel accounts. So you can read more there. Allow cPanel users to reset their password via email. So since that is recommended to be turned off, I'm going to turn that off as well. And there's also another one, reset password for sub accounts. This one I'll also turn off as well. And then we'll come back and see what else is available for changing in tweak settings. So check referrer blank security. Let's go and get that from tweak settings. This is also in tweak settings. So I'll come back to the tweak settings here and I will paste to search for it. So the option is not there. Let me remove that and referrer. So I'll just search for referrer and we have blank referrer safety check that needs to be enabled. And you can read more about what it does there. And then referrer safety check as well. This one, turn it on as well. And let's see what else we have under tweak settings. Check password env variable, copy. So this is going to hide passwords from CGI scripts using the env variable. So let's just come back here under tweak settings because that's under tweak settings. And let's search for passwords. Use MD5 with Apache. Let's just search for the next thing, reset password for cPanel. That one we've turned off. So this one, hide login password from CGI scripts. Of course, that seems like something we should turn on. Check password env variable. You should hide login passwords from CGI scripts. So that's the one we've just changed. Check SMTP restriction. Okay, that is under different settings. I'm looking for the ones which are under tweak settings to finish with those. All right, after doing that, let me come back, scroll all the way down, and then I'm going to save. Let's come back and refresh and see what else is remaining on this end. Resend. We're going to see what else we need to do. So that has increased our score to 89, and we will continue increasing this score until we get the maximum score or almost the maximum score. So we have here check accounts that can access a cPanel user. This one as well is under tweak settings. I didn't see that. Let's come back here and check accounts that can access cPanel user. Copy cPanel user. Come back and Control F to search, paste. The option we are looking for is cPanel user account, and for that, make sure you set it at that. By default, it will be there. Make sure you use cPanel user only. Let's check if there is anything else in tweak settings that we need to change. Here in tweak settings, there's a suggestion for check proxy subdomains. So this can unmask. So if you want to unmask a user's IP, this needs to be disabled. So let's just search for service subdomains. Copy. And there you go, service subdomains. So this one is enabled. We are going to have to turn it off. Scroll all the way down and then save. Come back here, refresh. So you can see that has taken us to 92. So let's see what other option we have. Check compilers. Okay, this is a good one. We need to disable the compilers for other users. The root will have access, but other users should not have access to the compilers. Check SMTP restriction. That one as well, we'll just click there to go where that is. Check compilers as well. I will open that in a new tab. So compiler access, this one, just click on disable compilers and it will disable it for other users. If you ever need to enable it for whatever reason, you can come here and enable it. And I'm going to close that. SMTP restrictions doesn't work well with CSF. They collide. That's why CSF recommends that you disable the SMTP restriction. And I refresh the page. Let's see. So check server services. The RPC bind service is not used by cPanel to do anything. So that means that we can enable it without any problem. So I'm just going to copy the name. And first of all, we're going to stop it and then disable it. You can do this on your terminal. So log in to your server. I am logged out. So Control L to clear the screen, and then I'll log in again. So the next thing, we need to stop that service, and you can stop it using systemctl stop, the name that I copied, enter. So I can also add this. After getting this warning, let me stop this one as well. I don't know that it's running as well. Enter. There we go. So after stopping the both of them, I'm just going to disable it. System Control delete to delete that, and then I'm going to disable RCP bind. I'm not sure if I'll have to remove the socket as well. Let's just paste that in there. Enter. There we go. So I've removed both of them, and that's a good thing. Let me refresh. There, that has been checked. PHP check. You should consider disabling commonly abused PHP functions. And these are functions that can be used to abuse your system. So that's why they need to be disabled, and they can only be disabled in the PHP INI, which gives the PHP various functions and options to operate with on your system. So that's why you need to disable this to secure your PHP applications, especially if you're running various PHP applications written by other people and you don't know whether they're writing good code. So what you're going to do is you're going to go into the PHP INI editor to edit these files. So first of all, let me just copy this because I will need to search this inside of the PHP INI. So I'll come in here and I'm going to search for PHP INI. So you don't have to do this on your server. There's a built-in PHP INI editor on WHM. So I'm going to open it in a new tab, the multi-PHP INI editor. Open it in a new tab. And then once we get here, I'm going to go into editor mode. And then I'm going to select PHP version 8.1. And I need to search for, so I'll just do Control F. And I will paste in the disable function that I've just copied. And you can see disable function doesn't have anything added to it. So I'm just going to come back here. And I will copy this line to disable all these functions that CSF recommends that I disable. I'm going to come in here. I'll just select the entire line, and then I will paste to replace that line. So after doing this, of course, you need to save. So to save, just scroll all the way up and then click on save. So you can restart PHP right now. For now, I'm just going to edit PHP 8.2 as well. So I'll come back and I will search for this in my PHP INI. So, it's already there. So I can just press enter to search for it. And there it is. So I'm going to copy this line once again. Copy. Select the entire line. Control V to add that line. And then I will save. So for the changes to take effect, of course, you're going to need to restart PHP and Apache. There are tools to restart your services. To restart a service, I'm just going to search for restart. And let's see if we have PHP FPM. So I'll open that in a new tab. And I will also need to restart Apache. So I'm going to open that as well in a new tab. And if I scroll down, there's an option to restart, and I will click on that to restart it. Apache as well, restart the Apache service, you can see Apache PHP restarted successfully. So let's see what's next on the recommendations. So we've changed the settings for that. We have edited this. Let's just refresh and see if it has been recognized. There we go. One step at a time, and we're getting the green check marks. So that's what we need to do. The next thing, SSH, check SSH on non-standard port. So the default port for SSH is port 22, but you can change the SSH port. So before you change the SSH port, come into the firewall. Here on CSF, there's actually a nice tool here, view listening ports. So you can view listening ports so that the SSH port you're going to change to does not collide with another port. So for example, to change the SSH port, that's one of the things that I had added here. Let's say I want to use port 999, okay? Port 999. I can come back to WHM and I can just search, do Control F to search if there is 999 anywhere, or you can just go down and see, because the ports are in chronological order. You can just check if the port you want to use is being used by anything else. In this case, it's not being used by anything, so I can change it to port 999. So the first thing I need to do, if I want to change my default SSH port, I need to add the port to my firewall, because if I don't add it, I'm going to get locked out. I won't be able to log into my server. So I'll just click there on config server to go to the homepage of config server, CSF server. I want to add a port. So once you've confirmed that your port is not listed, is not being used by another service, you can just come down to firewall configuration. Where is that? Down here. And if you scroll down, there's an option for allowing TCP in, TCP out. So the port we are going to allow is port 999, and I just want to add it after that, 999. So I'll just allow it in because it is sending information in. So we are going to log in with this port into our SSH. So after doing that, I'm just going to scroll all the way down to change the settings and then restart the firewall. So after restarting the firewall, that's when I'm going to change the SSH port, and then I'm going to try to log in before I even try anything else. So it has been restarted successfully. Let's come back here. To change your port, it's actually very easy. Once you're logged into your server, you just need to go to SSH configuration file and change the port from there. So of course, I'm using sudo. I don't need sudo right now because I am the root user. So I'm going to go to my server. If I'm not already logged in, I would log in, but I'm logged in. So if you're not logged in, log into your server, and I'm going to paste in the command to edit the SSH configuration file. I will enter. If you come down here, you're going to see we have port 22. You can also set numbering in Vim, and I can do it for this example. Set NU, and that's going to set the numbering system. So if you look at number 21, line number 21, we have the port number. I can uncomment it, because if you comment it, it means that it's going to use the default port, which is 22. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm not in insert mode in Vim, so I need to go into insert mode, and I'll just do Shift A. That will put me in insert mode, and I can just delete number 22 and replace it with 999. After doing that, I'll just press escape, and I will do Shift ZZ to save, and I need to restart SSH. So I'm going to do systemctl restart. Let's just do reload SSH. Okay, so SSHD. Okay, I'm used to using Ubuntu, it's usually SSH, so here it's SSHD. So let me open up a new tab. Let me open up a new window of Git Bash and try to log in with our new SSH port. Let's try to log in with the default port 22, enter you can see connection refused on port 22. So let's try to log in on port 999. Enter. And there you go. Now, if we need to log in, we are going to have to use this new port to log in to our SSH. Otherwise, you won't be able to log in. The default SSH port, let's see what result is going to give us at this point. So SSH port has been changed. So server check for CXS. So for this, open that. It is a paid feature. If you want this, you can buy it and install it, set it up on your server. Unfortunately, I'm not going to go with it. So that will remain as a check mark on my CSF recommendations. Then check for OSM. Let's see if this is also another paid item. So outgoing spam monitor. All right, this is also $40 per server. You can go with it if it is important for you to maintain an order for your mail and detect outgoing spam. However, I'm going to leave that on as well. So these two, I will leave them without working on them because they're paid items. Okay, so let's open the etc configuration file for CSF to see what we can do there. So I'm going to go to my server once again. Let's just use Vim to look at this file. Shift insert. There we go. Restrict syslog. I will copy that. / to search. Shift insert to paste. And then I will enter. I'll press N. All right, so just keep pressing N to keep searching for restrict log. If you want to go back up while searching with Vim, you can do Shift N. And it's going to take you to the previous find. I'm just pressing Shift N to go back, but I can press N to go down, searching for restrict log. So here you can see there's a recommendation. What we need to change is there. So you can see the recommendation there. For this, I'm going to come down here and I will do Shift A to go to the end of this line to put me in insert mode at the end of this line. And then I'll just enter 3 for the recommended option. And that is not the last item that we need to change on this configuration file. The next item I will check is this SMTP block. So I'm going to copy that and I will press escape to go out of edit mode in Vim. And then I will search again for that by pressing / and then shift insert to paste in Git Bash. And then I will enter to search for it and just press N until we get to the item that needs to be configured. So the item that needs to be configured is there. So to enable this option, I'm going to do Shift A once again, and that's going to take me to the end, and I need to change this to 1 to enable this option. So this one as well, we need to change on the CSF configuration. So I'm going to copy. I will do escape so that I can search for that again. I'm going to enter / and then shift insert to search for that. And you can see it is currently set to 0. So if you want it to be active, you need to set it to 1. I'm going to do Shift A, then change the value of that to 1. Let's see what else we need to change. Syslog check. We need to change this one as well. I'll press escape to go out of insert mode. And then I will search for this syslog check, enter, and then, so I've hit the bottom. If you press Shift N, it's going to take you back to the top until you find the item you're looking for. In this case, I'm looking for syslog check. So we need to enable this one as well. So I'm going to do Shift A and I'm going to change the value to 1 to enable it. Let's look at anything else that's remaining. We have this one item that's remaining. Check. So we need to check this one as well. Press escape, search, enter, and I need to enable it. So I'm going to do Shift A, 1 to change the value of that, and then I think that's the last item. So I'm just going to do escape, and then I'll do Shift ZZ to change those configurations. And then of course I need to restart it, and to restart it, I can actually just restart it here. So I'm going to open config server plugin in a new window. And if I scroll down, there is somewhere where it says firewall restart. So I can click on firewall restart. So let's go back and refresh and see if any of these have changed. So I'll refresh, resend. Almost all the other items have been improved. Oh, for this I put 1 second. Okay, so I need to increase the value. I'll run the same command again, and I need to search for syslog check. I will search for this. Shift, insert, enter. So I haven't found it, so I'm just going to press N until I get to the one where I made the change. So syslog check. So if it recommends 300 and 3600, let me just put in 500. That's 500 seconds. So I'm going to escape, and then I'm going to Shift ZZ to save, and I can do CSF -R to restart CSF. Let's come back and reload and see if this is now gone. Okay, so everything seems to be okay other than these ones. There are 2 items that are missing. So we're going to forget about that. I think up to this point, our server is much better than how it was when we began. So as I said, if you need to do the other recommendations, which you should probably look at as well, come here into documentation and look at the recommended best practices. Best practices and search. Click on this best practices link. And here I say there are 4 pages. Look into each of them and look at the recommendations and follow them one step at a time, because most of them are actually things that you need to set up in WHM, and some of them probably are already enabled. That's it for this part. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. I will be able to assist you. So there's something I didn't cover in the last video, and that is how to turn on two-factor authentication, and also how to install ClamAV, which is important for protecting email and also protecting file uploads. So let's start by seeing how you can enable two-factor authentication on your WHM. This is usually found under Security Center, but you can just search for it. You can just search for TwoFA. And that's going to bring this option. You can click on it to enable two-factor authentication. So if you come down here, you're going to see two-factor authentication is off. You just need to turn it on. And now it's on. Now the next step is to set up two-factor authentication for WHM. But first, you can change the issuer here. And this is just what's going to appear on your authentication app. So I can call this WHM. And let's save. There we go. The next step is to enable two-factor authentication for WHM. So I'm just going to click there on Manage My Account and make sure you have your phone ready. You need to download Google Authenticator or whichever authentication app you use. Go to your phone, open Google Authenticator. You can see the status is not configured. So I'm going to click there on Set up two-factor authentication. I can scan the QR code. There we go. And then I need to enter the security code. So on your Authenticator app, you're going to see the name, My WHM Server 1, or whichever name you chose. So enter the security code that's currently active. You can configure two-factor authentication. All right, so my account is configured with two-factor authentication. I can actually test it. Let me log out and log back in. And now it's asking for the security code on my app. There we go. TwoFA is now enabled for WHM. The next thing I want to enable is ClamAV, which is an antivirus that protects email and file uploads. So I'm just going to search for plugins. And you can see it is under the cPanel tab. So I'm just going to click there on Manage Tabs, Manage Plugins, I mean. And then I'm going to scroll down and I can install ClamAV. So you can see the installation is in progress. Let's wait. So I'm getting this warning, but let me just go to plugins and see if it's installed. I can collapse all of this, and then if you come down to plugins, you'll see, okay, I have to refresh the page. And now we can see ClamAV is there, and I can click on configure. I'll just click on save to save these configurations. I don't have any users, but if I did have users, you can actually go in and override various configurations for specific users. So if you add a user there, you can select what needs to be scanned and then you save that, but you can just leave it at the default settings. That's what I wanted to cover in this video. Most importantly, it's very important for you to enable two-factor authentication. So once you enable two-factor, even cPanel will have multi-factor authentication feature enabled on it, and the users can set their two-factor settings. That's what I wanted to do in this video, to enable two-factor authentication and also to install ClamAV. So that's it. Let's continue in the next part. And in the next part, let's see how to run your first website. Of course, you're going to create a cPanel account and then see how you can run your first website. See you then. In this part, we're going to see how to set up cPanel and login. We'll create a user, and by the end of the video, you're going to have WordPress website running on your cPanel server. I will use this domain for this example. And if I go to this domain for now, you can see it redirects to done.com. And that's because of the IP address that is there. And we're going to change this before we add the website. So first things first, let's create a cPanel user. So log into WHM, and we need to create a cPanel user because you can't log into cPanel with your root user, and you definitely can't use that for creating your websites on cPanel. User management in WHM can be done under account information and account functions. So here under functions, this is where we can create a new account. And I'm just going to click there, create a new account. Another thing that I should probably remind you is that if you don't add your DNS records, here under server configuration, there's this basic web host setup. So under this, so here is where you can add your DNS records. If you scroll down, the DNS records will be there. Make sure you add this because without name servers on your WHM settings, you'll not be able to create an account. You need to create an account for your users. And another thing that's also important to creating users is under packages. So if it's just you that's on the server, then this might not be a big deal. If other people will be hosted on the server, you'll need to create packages, and you can click there. You can search for packages there and create a package, but we're just going to use the default package for this first example. The domain that I want to give this user, I'll just use the domain that we're going to use as an example here, and I will add the domain there. Username, you can give it a username that's at least difficult. Maybe I can add a number there. I'm just using an easy username that's easy to remember. Remember, this is the one that is used to log into cPanel, so make sure it's something that is kind of complicated. So password, I will use a generated password. Even if you forget the password, you can always come back here and reset the password yourself. I'll just paste the password there and the user as well. So for email, I'll just use any email here. And then package, you can choose a package. If you have other packages created, they will be there for you to select. I'm going to go with the default for now. Or you can also select the options manually. So you can give them the different specifications you want. Maybe you want a certain amount of disk space. Any limitations you want to put on them, you can put here, but it's always easier to do this in a package so that you can reuse the package. cPanel theme, I'll just go with the default there, which is Jupyter, and then the local. Then you can choose the language, local there. If you're in Turkey, you can go with Turkish there for your cPanel for this user. Enable Apache Spam Assassin, definitely. Enable Spam Box, definitely. For you to use this, you have to enable that. So this will keep all the spam in one box, and that's what you want. Mailing route settings. So if you want to use a mailing route, maybe you're using Workspace, Google Workspace, or you're using something else for mail, then you can come here and do remote mail exchange. But I'm going to go with local mail exchange. Reseller settings. If you want this account to be a reseller is an account that can create other accounts and can give them functionalities that gives specific settings. So they can also create their reseller package and assign those to various users. So if this is just a normal user, and that's the one I'm going to go with, a normal user, I'm just going to leave that unchecked. And then DNS settings. Enable DKIM on this domain, definitely. So enable SPF, definitely. So I will leave the last two options unchecked. So after all that, I'm just going to click on create, and this should create our user. Scrolling down, you'll see that the user and all the settings have been created. So here there's also a link to go straight to cPanel, and you can click on this link. So whenever you're the root user, you can actually log in as other users. If I was to list the users on my account, on my cPanel, I mean, and to list the users on your cPanel, you can just come here under account information and list accounts. You're going to see that we have the one user that I've just created. And if you come here, you'll see that you can actually manage this user. You can change their password, change email. You can suspend the account. You can prevent them from being suspended. So here under list users, there is usually a way or a button that allows you to log into other users, but that has been disabled, and we disabled that, and we did disable that. And if you want to enable it, you can go into tweak settings to allow root access to user cPanel accounts. That allows you to just click and log into a user directly. So if that is a security feature that you want to disable, you can go into tweak settings, and it will lead you directly to accounts that can access a cPanel user account. So you can see there's an option for you to allow the root user, the account owner, and the cPanel user to access it. And this means that if you allow this, then the root user can just click on the link and it will log them into that user, and they will assume that user. Account owner and cPanel user. So in this case, the root user is not allowed, but the account owner, which in this case is root, will be allowed to click onto that user and log in. So let's just do this as an example. And then I will save. So account owner is the one who created the account. In this case, the root user owns the account that we just created. So if I was to go back into account information and list accounts, I should be able to log into that user without using a password. So if you come down here, you're going to see that something new has been added here, and this allows me to just click on it, and it's going to log me into that user, and I can use that user to create my websites or whatever else I need to do with this user. So if this is a feature that you don't want, then you can always go back into the tweak settings and then look for that feature, users who can access a cPanel user, and then just make it the cPanel user only. In this case, we have logged in to cPanel, and the first thing I want to do on cPanel is to enable two-factor authentication. So now that we are here, you can start with WordPress. You can install WordPress. You can install SiteJet Builder. This is a free website builder that cPanel creates and provides for free to people who have cPanel licenses. And then you can also explore account and see what you have there. I'm just going to skip. So you can see if I click there on WP Toolkit, I will see I don't have any WordPress, but I can install WordPress. So before I install WordPress, let's go and see how we can enable two-factor authentication. So if I click on cPanel here to go home, you'll see cPanel has lots of things. So usually there's this search up here that will help you get wherever you want to go. So for example, if you're searching for something to do with files, you can just search for files and then go to the file manager or whichever one you want to go to. Let me enable two-factor authentication for this user. I enable that on WHM. Let me enable that on cPanel as well. So to enable two-factor authentication, let's just use the search up here, and I'm just going to search for TwoFA. I can click on two-factor authentication. I can set up two-factor authentication. I will use Google Authenticator to scan the QR code. And then I need to enter the security code that I'm provided on my Authenticator app. So make sure you configure this. At least it will add a level of security for your cPanel user. So now that that is done, let's get to installing WordPress and running WordPress on cPanel. And cPanel has this nice feature here called WP Toolkit. This is very helpful if you have WordPress websites running on your cPanel. So before I even click on install WordPress, let me go to WHM and I want to copy my IP and I want to add various DNS records on Cloudflare. So for your website to run and you're using Cloudflare, of course you're going to need an A record, and the A record is the authoritative record that tells the internet where to go. So if somebody looks for your domain, it will tell them to go to this IP to look for your domain files. So I'm going to save, and on top of the A record, at least you also need a WW record. So this is a bare minimum. And for WW, I'm going to use a CNAME, and the CNAME is going to be www, and I'm going to use @ and @ signifies the domain name itself. So I'm going to save that. And after changing the IP, the A record IP, let's see if the domain now knows where to go. Okay, there you go. The domain has been pointed to your cPanel. And the first thing I will need to do, let's see if I need to add the domain on cPanel again, or I can just go ahead and install. I can just go ahead and install WordPress. So I can go ahead and install WordPress, and I'll just install it in the default location. I will not install it in any directory. If you want to install it in a directory, you can do so, but I will leave the default link so that there is no directory that is going to affect the path of my WordPress. And then the website title, you can give it a title there, and then plugin theme, choose a plugin theme. So these are just preset things that cPanel has added here, and I'm just going to go with, let me go with WordPress Essentials. I'm sure that's just going to give me the bare minimum of what I need on WordPress. And then website language, if you want to change your WordPress language, you can change that there. And of course, you want to use the latest and the current version of WordPress. And the username, of course, use a strong username here. Make sure you have a strong username. Don't use the default value if it is a weak one. Make sure you use a strong one, because WordPress is constantly getting brute forced, and if your password is weak and your username is weak, you will get hacked. Let me copy this password and user. And then the database, you can change the database settings, or you can just use the default values there, and I will leave the default values. And then also WP Tools allows you to enable automatic updates. For this, I'm just going to go with yes. All major and minor WordPress updates need to happen. So here you can choose to enable auto updates. You can even force it to automatically update everything. That's the one I want to go with. I like to update everything, so I'm just going to leave plugins updated, and the same for themes. Themes, I will also leave them forced. After all these settings, I'm just going to click on install. So let's wait for all this to complete. Download completed, database created, configuring the installation. There we go, installation complete. WordPress has been installed. Take a minute to set it up. So you can go and install plugins, or no thanks. Let's just click there on go and install plugins. So WP Toolkit allows you to manage your WordPress right here on cPanel. But I'm going to close that. WP Toolkit shows us that we have this website. And if you need to log into that website, click there to log into the website. Let's see what setup does. So that allows you to regenerate a new password for your WordPress. And it also shows you the WordPress version you're running. So you can do all this. You can enable password protection for your WordPress so that when someone visits your site, they have to enter a password. For now, let's come to the WordPress, reload it. Let's go to the front end and reload it and see if the WordPress was successfully installed. So there we go. The WordPress has been installed. Your WordPress has been installed successfully. So let me try to log into my WordPress, and I can just click there on login. So it's taking too long. This means that something is probably wrong. So let's just wait. But the fact that it's taking this long, there is probably something wrong, and that could be due to DNS or some setting on Cloudflare. So we're going to, and you can see something actually indeed is wrong. So we're going to first of all look at the DNS. Let's come to cPanel and we can just search for zone editor, and this is where you'll find the DNS records for your different domains that you add on cPanel. So I'm going to go to manage. And here I can see that currently I only have this one, which is not true. If you go to WHM, you're going to see that there are other records. So this is something that happens due to the feature list on the package. So the package being used by this user doesn't have the list to allow all the other records to be shown. So let's go back to WHM and I'll search for package. Just come here and search for packages, and there you can go to edit a package. So if you're using a different package, select that package and edit it. In this case, I only have the default package. I'm going to click there, edit. And if I was to scroll down, there is something here called feature list. So this feature list, there is a couple of features that are bundled together for this package. So I can click there on view to view those features enabled for that package. If there's any feature you don't want for a particular package, you can always come here and disable it. In this case, if I scroll all the way down, the one that I don't have access for is this, and I can see this one is there, so it should probably work. Maybe that's a bug in WHM, I don't know, because I can see the A and the CNAME records should be shown like they should, but they're not being shown. So I'm just going to click there on zone editor to show all these other records as well. And then I'm also going to disable that and enable it again, and then click on save. And once that is saved, I can come back to my zone to see if the records are now being displayed. Let me refresh the page. And now you can see all our records are now being shown here as they should. There are certain records that we can just enable to be created automatically. I don't know if I can find it here, dkim. Okay, yeah. So if I search for dkim, I want to enable them globally. So any account that is created, those will also be created. So to do that, I'm just going to click here on proceed. And these are records that are important for email. This should update the existing accounts with the dkim and SPF records. So you won't have to select this. The next time you're creating an account, you don't have to select this. It is something that should be done automatically. So there are more features that you have here on DNS functions. You can even come here, just click on DNS functions, and you'll see there are certain features here on WHM that you can look at. If you want to do anything, you can come here and find what you're looking for as pertains to DNS on your cPanel. So this is on WHM. Let's go back to cPanel. The next thing I want to do is I want to go to SSL and see which SSL have been issued for my domain. That could be the issue that's causing this, because I can see there's an SSL there, but maybe it is not being recognized properly. So I'm going to click there on SSL, TLS. All these features can be found on the homepage of your cPanel, but it's much easier to search if you know what you're looking for. So you can also change the system's default key in WHM. If you want the default key to be any of these other types, you can do so. In this case, I'm just going to leave the default here, but you can always go with RSA 4096 bits, although it would be slightly slower. Let's come here and manage SSL. I want to see if there's an SSL for my domain. And for this domain, I can see that SSL has been issued, and I can look at the certificate details. So this is a self-signed certificate. Okay, so even though it's a self-signed certificate, I know I can use this with Cloudflare, and you can see it expires then. So I can use that with Cloudflare. So here I can see that I cannot go into that page. Let me go to Cloudflare and I will come to SSL settings. This is probably what's causing this redirection issue. I'll come to Cloudflare, come down, and I'm going to make it full. And if I make it full, it should work with the other SSL. So if I refresh this, let's see how this is going to work. And there we go. Now that is working well. So whenever you see that issue of redirection and you know that you've set up your DNS properly and all the settings are working well, just come to Cloudflare and try and change the SSL settings for that website and use full. If you want to use the full strict one, you're going to need an origin certificate from Cloudflare, which can be generated down here. So there we go. We have this WordPress here, and we can go to the website. I thought that if I clicked on WP Toolkit, it should allow me to log in. But even if that's not the case, you saw that you can easily generate a password by clicking on Setup. So when I click on it, you can see that it automatically logs me in. I can already see dashboard, and that's what we want. So if you want to log in, you just click there and it's going to automatically log you in. At the end of this video, we have achieved our objective, and the objective was to get our WordPress installation working on cPanel. Just a review of what we've done so far. First of all, we created a user on WHM, and then we used the user to log into cPanel, and you also saw how you can make the user automatically log into cPanel or disable that function under tweak settings. So that's something you can do. If you don't want any user to automatically log into a cPanel user, that's a setting you can change. And then after that, we logged into cPanel, and then we went into WP Toolkit where we installed WordPress. And then after that, we did set up something to show our DNS records in the zone editor. That was something I overlooked, but we were able to get it working. And then after that, we were able to log in here by just changing the SSL setting on Cloudflare. Now the next step, of course, you're going to need to copy the DNS records from cPanel and add them here. But there is an option here for, if you come to, where is it? If you come up here, there's an option to import DNS records. So let's see if that's the last thing I can do before we end the video, because I read somewhere that we can get our DNS records from our website backup. So let's come here and do backup. Backup wizard. I'll click there on backup, and I will take a full backup of my website. Generate backup. Full backup download is in progress, but we can just go back. So there's a backup available for download. Let me download it and see if it's something that can help me get my DNS records. So let's open it to see what's inside here. So let me end it here, and we're going to continue in the next part. In the next part, I'm going to try and see if I can import DNS records into Cloudflare, but if I can't, I'm just going to add them one step at a time manually, and the DNS records are all available here. If you just search for Zone Editor, you're going to see all your DNS records for the domain. So that's it for this part. If you have any question, feel free to let me know. In this part, let's see how we can import all the DNS records into Cloudflare. So there's an import feature here. What we need is a file with our DNS records. Let's go to cPanel and see if those records are there for us. So I'll come back to cPanel. I'm going to start from the top. I'm just going to search for backup. I need a backup of my website. And in that backup, there will be a file that we can import into Cloudflare. So I'll click on Backup Wizard. And under Backup Wizard, I'm going to backup. And I can take a full backup. There is a file here with my backup, but assuming you don't have a backup, I'm just going to come here and generate backup. And let the backup continue. Depending on how big your website is, the backup will take a small amount of time. Let me just click back to see if the backup is now ready. And you can see, since my website is pretty small, the backup is ready and I can download the backup. So I'll download the latest here, this one. Start download. For you to open the backup, make sure you have WinRAR installed because the backup is in tar.gz. So make sure you have WinRAR installed for you to open the backup. And then I'll just click there on open and it's going to open the backup in WinRAR. So here, if I open that, but the one I want is here under DNS zones. So I'm going to open that and I want to extract this. I can extract it into a desktop. Let me just create a folder, Control-Shift-N. I'll just call it new folder, open it, and I will import. I will extract this file in there. I'll go back into Cloudflare. We test if the backup is compatible with Cloudflare. So I'll click there on import export, and then I can drag in my file, new folder, and I'll just drag it in there. And of course, we want to proxy the imported DNS records. I will click on upload. So some records failed to upload. Content for NS is invalid. NS is invalid. That's okay. This already exists. That already exists. So anything that did not come through, it's okay. It doesn't really matter. We can add those manually. But the good thing is that the other records have been added here. If you want to use cPanel mail, you should use the A record with unproxied. All right. I would suggest for the mail record, you change it to an A record. You can just turn this into an A record and do not proxy the mail record. The objective of this video was to import your records from cPanel into Cloudflare, and we've done that. So that's it for this one. If you have any questions, let me know. In this video, let's see how you can add a subdomain to your cPanel and how you can add a second domain. If you have another website you want to run on cPanel, then let's see how you can do that. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to add a domain called store.that. So before I even do that, before I even copy that, let's add the DNS record for store here. And I'm going to copy, and I need to add an A record for store. We're going to add a domain called store on cPanel. Let me paste that and I will save. Now that's the bare minimum. Even now, if I was to go to, I've not added this domain on cPanel, but if I was to go to store dot, I mean, it's redirecting to this, but it should not. Maybe that's a setting that I haven't looked at, but you can see it goes to this domain. So what we're going to do is we're going to add this domain on its own in cPanel. So I'll just copy the domain, copy, and I'll come back to cPanel. And you can go home, or you can search. You can search there. If you need to search, you can search there. Or you can scroll down until you find domain, and you can create the domain here. So let's go to domains. So I need to add a domain, so I'll create a new domain. I'll just enter subdomain. You can change the root folder for that domain. So I'm going to submit to create this domain. So the domain has been created. After we create the domain, we can go and install WordPress on it. So if you come here, WP Toolkit is very helpful. You can see here we have one issue. So if I click on this, I can just click on it, and you can turn on redirect to HTTPS for a domain that you installed via WP Toolkit. So it's very helpful, and it's going to bring you here under domains, and you can just click there on force redirect to HTTPS. Let us go back to WP Toolkit. We are going to install WordPress in the domain that we've just created. So I can click there on install to install a new WordPress. And I will choose the domain from there. So you have to first of all add the domain for it to reflect here under WP Toolkit. You can add an installation directory, but I'll just leave that as it is. Then website title, I'll just add WordPress website store. Of course, change these settings to match your website. This time around, let me go with e-commerce pack, and I'm sure this is going to install WooCommerce and any related plugins. Language, as usual, select your language from there. WordPress version, of course, go with the current, and then these settings, I'll just leave them as they are. And I can install. If I need to change anything, I can always click on it and change it. So I'm going to install this. All right, installation is complete. You can go ahead and install plugins. If there are any plugins you want to install on that site, you can install any plugins you need there. Maybe you want to install Yoast SEO, you can install Yoast. I'm going to close that. And we can come down to our website that we've just installed. And let's try to log in. If we go into login, click on it, see if we can go into the dashboard. There you go. You have created a new WordPress subdomain there. So the most important thing, make sure that you add the DNS records here. So the DNS records for your new domain are also under zone editor. So you can add them manually, or you can import them like I showed you in the last video. Okay, you're going to see that since it is a subdomain for this, it has been bundled in together with that. So if I go to manage, I should see all the other records for store, and they're there. So what you'd need to do again is just do a backup of the domain and then re-import them into Cloudflare. So let's say you want to add another website. The only thing I'm going to do in this case is to show you the steps are just the same. So let me choose another website that I can use as an example here. Okay, so if I want to add this domain on my cPanel, I'll just copy, come to cPanel, search for domains, add, click there on create a new domain. So you can see here, you have reached the maximum number of domains for this account. So that means you'll have to come back here and go to packages, edit a package. So that has to do with packages. So whenever someone is selling web hosting with cPanel, packages are what drives that. You say this domain can create one website, another can create 10, and those packages will then be matched with a system like WHM CS, and then those can be created automatically. So you can see here we have unlimited all this, but maximum add-on domains, 0 maximum packed domains. So the domain that we need to add, that I'm adding next, is an add-on domain. Add-on domain and packed domain. A packed domain is a domain that you can just put here and maybe it redirects somewhere, or you're just adding it here so that the domain can have somewhere to be, can have a home, but it's not that important. If you want to create a website, you'll always use the add-on domains. So you can add this add-on domain feature for your users if they want to add more domains. So here, once I add that, I can just refresh this page. And now I can add another domain. So everything in cPanel, almost everything I mean, is controlled by a package. So if you say someone can only have 3 databases in the package in WHM, they cannot create more than 3 databases. If you say they can only have 5 subdomains, that's what they're going to get. They cannot go above that. So that's one thing that you can do in WHM for security, just to make sure that your resources are not used where they're not supposed to be used. So you can submit, add the domain here. Okay, so you can see, since I have not pointed that domain to cPanel, it's telling me that the domain, the A record for that domain does not point to this cPanel server, so it cannot be added by cPanel. So if you want to fix that, you have to come here and change the IP there. You can see this IP is pointing somewhere else, and I don't want to change it. I'll just leave it like that. So make sure the IP, before you add a domain to cPanel, make sure that you have added an A record that points to your cPanel server. And once the domain has been added successfully, you can go ahead and install WordPress or use Site Builder to build your website with it. So that's it for this part. If there's anything that I've forgotten, let me know and I will create a video for that. Welcome to another part. This is actually something I should have done a long time ago. I should probably have done it immediately after installing cPanel and WHM. And that is changing the host name. So even though I did everything right to set up the host name, you can see that cPanel gave me a throwaway host name right there. And if I go to my server, let me just see if they affected anything on this end. So if I look at host name, or you can see they even gave me this as a host name, even though I had set up my own host name. And if I go to vi etc hosts, I can see I had added this correctly and they have added something else here. You can see they just added it onto this. So this is not what I want, definitely not what I want. So I'm just going to delete this line, and to delete in Vim, I can just do DD, and that's going to delete that line. And then I'm going to do Shift ZZ to save, and I'm not going to do anything else. Let me just come and change the host name on cPanel. So I'll come back here into cPanel, and if I come here, I can search for host name. Change host name. The host name that I want to use is that. Copy. Scroll down. There's an option to change your host name right there. So I'll do Ctrl+ to increase the font here. And then I'm going to paste. And I will change the host name. Let me just confirm that everything is as it should. That is the right domain I want to use. Yes, I'm just going to click on change. So give it time to do whatever it is doing. There we go. Host name is set to that. If I reload the page, let's see if this is going to change. Okay, so what happened? Anyway, let me just come back to my server and I'm going to confirm that the host name has been changed. So I'm just going to do host name once again. Okay, the host name has been changed there. Let's do etc. Let's look at the etc hosts file. So this is something that people forget, but this is very important for mail delivery. When SMTP servers are talking to each other, this is very important. You need to ensure that your IP address, the IP address for your server, is also reflecting your host name as it is doing there. You can see cPanel has added it for me here, just like it should. So in the first part, before, when I opened the file, I deleted this because I didn't want it to collide with what cPanel was adding. That's why I deleted it before changing the host name. So it's important to change it here in your etc hosts file as well. So you've seen how you can change your host name in cPanel, and this is an important one. If you're going to do mail, make sure you change your host name. Shift ZZ to save, even though I didn't change anything there. So you've seen how to change the host name. The next thing I want to do is I want to show you how you can use your own name servers. All right, let's say you want your name servers to be ns1.thatdomain. We're going to see how we can do that. We're going to use Namecheap for that, and I'm going to use this domain as a sample. The good thing about doing this is you don't have to use Cloudflare, and your website will automatically get set up. If somebody creates a domain, the domain will instantly be accessible because you're using your name servers. Let's see how to set that up in the next part. This is where we stopped in the last part after changing the host's name. Now, let's see how we can use this domain as our name servers. Throughout the video, we have used Cloudflare. Now we're going to use our server as the DNS provider. So let's see how to do that. So I'm going to create two DNS records. So we're going to have ns1.that and ns2.that. And I can go to manage. So I'm using Namecheap for this example, but you should feel free to follow along with any domain provider that you're using. So I'll go to manage the domain on Namecheap. I'll come here under DNS, advanced DNS. So the first thing I should do for that domain is to change the name servers back to Namecheap, because currently the name servers for this domain are Cloudflare. So if I go back, I can change, and that's also there. So that link will just bring you back to domain. And here I need to change, if I scroll down under name servers, I need to change the name servers back to Namecheap basic DNS. And once I do that, I can just click there on save. And after saving, you should now be able to manage various DNS things for this domain. So if I scroll all the way up and I go back to advanced DNS, I should see the DNS records for my domain. All right, so there they are. So what I want to do here is I need to create parent name servers for my domain. So let's come down. That's usually somewhere down here. You can see here on Namecheap, they're called personal DNS server. Depending on your DNS provider, it will probably be called child name servers, and that's also common. So look for child name servers or personal name servers. And that's what we're going to create here. So we're going to register a name server for our domain. So I'm going to click there on add name server, and I can just call it ns1, and the IP address is the IP address of your server. So if you have multiple IPs, you can use multiple IPs, and you can have multiple IPs connected to cPanel. Unfortunately, I only have the one IP address, and that's the one I'm going to use for this example. So where can I get my IP? Where can I get my IP and just copy it? Okay, let me just go back to my server. So here I can just do IP route, and that is my server's IP. Copy. And I'll come back to advanced DNS and I'll paste. So there, put in the IP address of your cPanel where WHM is installed. That's the IP address you're going to put there. And then you can click on done. So name server successfully registered. We need to add another one. Before I add another one, let's just click on search to see if that's been registered. And you can see it is there. It's now registered for my domain. So I'll add the second name server and I will just choose NS2. You can use any of this here, but I'm going to go with NS2. And then I'm going to paste in my IP once again, click outside and then click on done. The IP address, paste it again, and then I'll click on done. And then I can click there on search. So this means that I can now use my two name servers as name servers for any of my domains. I'll just have to connect them back to my cPanel. So if you want to use your name servers anywhere else, you can use them now. Let's just come back to cPanel and we're going to change our name servers. That was here under server configuration. To change the name servers for cPanel, the default name servers for cPanel, I can just change it here under server configuration under basic web host manager setup. I can add that there. Paste. And of course this will be NS2. And I'm going to save changes. All right, so the moment of truth. First of all, let's go and test our domains. You know what? The first website I can actually test with this new name servers is that domain. So if I come back here and I change this back to custom and I give it the name servers for itself, and I give it the name servers that I've just created, if it points back to our cPanel server, then everything is working correctly. And then we can now test if our name servers have been properly propagated. So I can just do DNS checker. And let me check the NS for this domain. So remember, we are checking the domain, and I'm going to do NS check, search. And if you scroll down, you're going to see that in certain areas it has not propagated, but in certain areas it is correctly pointing to my name servers. So this means that I just need to give it time to propagate properly. So if you want to add any website, make sure you add the records early in advance. So let's see how to add a website with our records. So the process for adding a website to your cPanel, now that you have your own name servers registered, the process is this. You first of all go to your domain provider and change your name servers to reflect these two name servers that you've just created. Every domain will use this. All the domains you create now will use this. If you have customers, make sure that wherever the domain is registered, they go there and they change their name servers to the ones you've just registered. And then after that, they can now go to cPanel, and let's just do an example here with cPanel accounts. So list accounts. I want to log into one account. Let's log into the account we created last time. To log into this account, I'm just going to click there on cPanel, and that should log me into the cPanel account for that user. I want to add a website, so I can come down, search for domains, or I can just search for domain there. And I'm going to click on domains. And now I can add another domain here. Create a new domain. Enter the domain there. Paste. Of course, I want to add for this domain, so I don't want it to share. So this is an add-on domain. I already have a main domain here. That's why it's asking you to share the root folder with that domain. If you don't want to share the root folder, you can uncheck that and it's going to create its own root folder. This is a better way of management, so I'm going to uncheck that and have this in its own public directory folder. And then of course it will be like a subdomain of this. As long as it's an add-on domain, it's usually a subdomain of that, but you can still access it using that domain. So I'm just going to click on submit. I'm going to click on submit and just give it time to create what it's creating. And now that everything has been created, we can click there to go and access the domain. You can test using a VPN. So if you open a VPN, and I'm just going to use the Opera browser for this because it has an inbuilt VPN. If I click there, that's going to enable VPN. And let's try Americas and see if our DNS has propagated in wherever this location is. The Americas, that's probably South America. So I'm going to paste and go. And you can see in the Americas, South America, the domain has propagated, right? So this is cPanel. If I go to my cPanel and I create anything inside of that directory, and I can go to that, if I click there on that link, this should take me to the file manager. So we are now under public HTML for that domain. So here, let's create a new file. Let's create a new file, .html, index.html, and then I create the new file and it's empty. So we shouldn't have any problems. All right, so you can see DNS is working properly. So just a recap of how to use your own DNS records. This is something that is not available with every domain provider. Certain domain providers don't have this. So if your domain provider doesn't have this, make sure you migrate your domain somewhere else. Namecheap, I'm sure, has it. GoDaddy, I think GoDaddy has it as well, definitely. And the things you need to create on your domain provider is what is called personal or child name server. So here under advanced, you can see in Namecheap, it is called personal name server. Okay, so you register a name server and Namecheap will be responsible, your DNS provider will be responsible for being the top level name server. So if anybody goes to your domain, the name server that you registered here on Namecheap will be identified as a name server that is responsible for that domain. That means that they will redirect it to your server because that's the IP that's registered here in this name server. So that's why I'm telling you there are certain domain providers that don't have this. So if your domain provider does not have this, the only thing you can do in that case is just to migrate your domain somewhere else. And then you can create a name server. You can create a child name server, or you can create a personal name server. Sometimes certain DNS providers will call it private name server, but it's the same thing essentially. So once you create that, customers can buy cPanel and they don't have to use Cloudflare if they don't want to. Let's just use your server automatically. So the moment they create a domain, the DNS records will instantly reflect as your server. If you want to see the DNS records for that, let's just go to DNS. We want to go to zone editor. So if you come to the zone editor, for that, the records have automatically been added here. If I click on manage, I can see all the records. The records have automatically been added here. You can see even DKIM has been added. So if they were to set up mail, everything should work as it should. You can see SPF has been added as well. All right, this has been a slightly long video, but I wanted to cover everything so that you can see what to do if you don't want to be using Cloudflare every time. So before I end the video, it's important for you to note that before your customers or before you add another domain, your cPanel, make sure you go to wherever the domain was bought and you add these name servers. So these are your new name servers. You can use them wherever you want. That's it for this video. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. So as I end this tutorial, there are a few things that I want to cover things that I may have overlooked, but are also important. So the first thing I want to talk about is the firewall. You remember I installed config server firewall, that is CSF firewall. When I was implementing some of the CSF recommendations, I did the implementations using SSH. You don't have to use SSH, okay? So if you come to firewall configuration, you can configure your server settings here. So if I click on firewall configuration, this is where you can configure your firewall. You don't have to log into your server to implement some of these firewall rules. Everything that I did can be done on this interface. And you can see testing is here. You remember I changed it from testing 1 to 0. 0 is equivalent of off. But I chose to go with the SSH route because maybe in future you won't be using WHM, you'll be using something else and you'll know how to configure CSF on SSH. All these other options, let's look at what we have down here. Restrict syslog 3. You see, you can change this option here. And we did change this using CSF configuration file. So any of these other options, you can go through them and see what else you want to improve or just reduce. Anything that you want to improve on, you can do so. That's something that I wanted to tell you. So you don't have to go to your SSH. You can change your settings here. And once you do that, just make sure you come all the way down. Then you click on change and then you'll get an option to restart CSF. The next thing, by default, cPanel will come and the default server will be Apache. If you want to set up Lightspeed, you can do so. And cPanel has a tool called Easy Apache that allows you to install various server software. Okay, here under software, you'll find Easy Apache 4. So let's go to Easy Apache 4 and see what you can do there. What we're interested in is here under currently installed packages. So if you want to install PHP, you want to install maybe even Nginx, you can do so right here. Before we go into this, up here you can see we have Lightspeed. Now, if you're going to run WordPress, Lightspeed Enterprise is one of the best servers for that. Especially if you're going to run multiple sites and your server is a tiny server, 4 GB and below, 4 GB of RAM I mean. Lightspeed is very resource friendly. So use it on your small servers. Unfortunately, the free version can only work on 2 GB of RAM and below, and it is only valid for one website, one domain on that Lightspeed. But when it comes to subdomains, you can run multiple subdomains. If your server is over 2 GB, of course, you cannot get the free version, but you can see how much it's going to cost you for the 8 GB RAM license. There are multiple options you can choose when it comes to Lightspeed pricing. Let's come down to currently installed. So you can see right now it's telling me that I have Apache 2.4 installed and PHP that installed. If I want to install another PHP version, I can just click there on customize. So if there's any Apache module that is required for a specific something that you're running, then you can enable it. You can search for the module. So just come down here, install the Apache module, then search for the module name and you can just enable it. So there are multiple, there are many. You can see right there, it shows you 10, but there are more that are not being shown. So that's why the search feature is here. You can search for it. Just search for it, select there. And then PHP versions as well. If you want to use a specific version of PHP, you can enable it from here. You can see PHP 8.0 is there. If you want to enable it, you can enable it. If you want to install it, just click on it and it will be installed. For instance, let's say I want to install PHP 8.3, I can install it. When you're installing it, just click there, PHP 8.3 and extensions. And let me just do a test and see if maybe the PHP 5 versions are also available. So you can see PHP 5.6 versions are not available. How about 7? So if you wanted to use this, there are alternatives, okay? Cloud Linux comes with all these other PHP versions. So that is also something else you can look into. If you want to use the older PHP versions, then you'd have to stick with Cloud Linux. There are also additional packages. So if I come here and click on additional packages, you can see you can install Node.js specific versions. If you want to run Node.js, you know the version you want to run. You can select it from there, And this will allow you to run Node.js applications using cPanel. You can see Nginx is already installed, but if it weren't installed already, I would just enable it. So this is one feature that I definitely encourage you to install, because the moment you install it, it's going to automatically cache all your websites, and that's something you want when you're using Apache. Definitely install Nginx, and I'm also going to show you where you can find it on Nginx Manager. So if you want to enable the Nginx Broadly compression, you can enable it there as well. If you want to enable Nginx gzip, you can enable it there as well. I don't know if it doesn't come by default here, but it should come by default here. So you can see there, it's telling you that it's going to be reverse proxy by default. So the moment you install it, it's like you've enabled reverse proxy, and that's definitely something you want. If you're not going to use Lightspeed, definitely install Nginx. So I've enabled this, and you can see there's still other packages. If there's something that you want to install for Nginx or for Node.js, you can search for it up here and install it. And once you have selected everything that you want to install, you can go to the next step. And the next step is just going to install them. So it's preparing the selected packages. If there are any updates to be done, the updates will also be shown here. You can see there are no packages that will be upgraded. These packages will be installed as you're told there. These are packages that are already available on my cPanel server, and they won't be touched because there are no changes to their settings. Something else that I didn't tell you about here under PHP extensions. PHP extensions are very important for most PHP software. Let's say, for instance, you want to run WHM CS, you want to run Blester, you're going to find that you'll need IonCube. So you can search for IonCube. And you can see here, since I have PHP 8.2 and PHP 8.1 installed, I can install it for those versions of PHP. So of course, you definitely want to use the latest loader, and that's the one I'm going to select. That's also the one I'm going to select. And once you select it, it's going to automatically set it up in your PHP. You don't have to do anything. It's going to set it up in your PHP. So that's just something that I know you'll probably have to install at some point, depending on commercial PHP applications you're running. So I can just go next. All right, so we are back to the review page. And if this is something that I want to do, I can provision. I'm just going to click there on provision to provision. Depending on how many applications you selected, this is going to install your applications. So you can see the provision process is complete. I can click there on done. All right, so you can see since I installed PHP 8.3, now it's being shown there. If you're not using any application, any module, always just come here under customize and delete them. It's better for a system to ask you to install something than a system to try to run and find that the application it requires is already available on your server. Now, the next thing that I said I was going to show you before I end the video was Nginx Manager, which is available here. Nginx Manager. Since Nginx is already cached, is already installed, you can see you can enable caching by default. So it's important for you to enable this. And then if you want to clear the cache for all your users, for all your websites, you can click there, and that's going to clear all the Nginx cache. You can rebuild Nginx configuration. You can restart Nginx. If you change any Nginx configurations, you can restart the Nginx server right there. And you can also reset users to system default. So this means that if certain users are not using Nginx, you can click here to reset users to default, and the default you can see is enabled. And you can also uninstall Nginx reverse proxy if you only want to use Apache. You can also enable Nginx for specific users. If you have multiple users, you can just come in here and enable Nginx or disable it for any user. So I can't cover everything. Most of the things you can just find on the documentation, cPanel and WHM FAQ. Go to the documentation, search for anything that you can see here and you're interested in. There are lots of answers on the cPanel documentation and the forum. Throughout this WHM and cPanel tutorial, you've seen how to do various things. Most importantly, we started by setting up the server and then installed cPanel, set up security for our WHM server, and then you saw how to add websites, how to work with DNS. I showed you two methods. The first one that we started with was using Cloudflare with WHM cPanel. You saw how to add a website and add it to Cloudflare. You saw how to migrate, or rather how to export and import your DNS records into Cloudflare from cPanel. And I also showed you how you can use your personal name servers so that you don't have to use cPanel. If you want to use your server for DNS management, then you saw how you could set that up. And we also did various overview for Easy Apache and how to configure your CSF firewall on cPanel. So of course, I can't cover everything in this tutorial. There are lots and lots of different features. Some of them you probably will never use. For instance, I didn't cover anything about resellers because when I created the tutorial, I was just creating it for someone that wants to install WHM cPanel and use it to run their websites, or maybe run it for a few other people without involving resellers. This is something that you'll find help and documentation for on the cPanel documentation, cPanel and WHM documentation. Anything that I didn't cover, just be sure that you can find it on the cPanel and WHM documentation and the forum. The forum is also very useful. You can find all this on Google. Just search for the problem you're having. Maybe you don't know how to change the server host name. You can just search for change cPanel host name, and you're going to find that there is either a documentation or there is a forum question, or maybe somebody already has a blog about that. I can't show you everything, but you can learn everything because the resources are already there. All right, that marks the end of this. I will see you next time.